First, I want to explain to everybody why the nuclear deal is so bad, because we forget it. What the nuclear deal does is it puts restrictions on Iran's nuclear program for a certain number of years, and those restrictions are automatically removed. In the original deal, some were removed in 5 years, in 8 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. They're automatically removed. Iran doesn't have to change its behavior. All we have to do is wait for the clock to change. That's it. And in those two words, automatically removed, you understand why Israel is opposed to it. Because contrary to the claims that were made, I don't know if the British government made it, but the U.S. government under Obama made it, and you'll see it here from Biden people today. They say that this deal blocks Iran's path to the bomb. It does not. It paves Iran's path to a nuclear arsenal. The best that can be said about the deal, that it makes it very unlikely that Iran would break out to a bomb in a decade, and the price of that is it virtually guarantees that Iran will break out to a nuclear arsenal in the second decade, while at the same time removing all the sanctions, which has hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into Iranian coffers. And as that money goes in, they're not doing it to establish a GI Bill for returning members of the Revolutionary Guard. They're doing it to fuel their campaign of conquest and aggression throughout the region with our Sunni Arab neighbors, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Gaza. They will fuel this war of aggression against us. So you haven't solved the problem at all. And you've now made the current situation in the regional aggression infinitely worse by freeing them up. Israel would support a deal that would actually get the one existential threat we face, which is a nuclear-armed Iran, get that off the table. But that's not what the deal does. And it doesn't even freeze the program. Some of you may be thinking, well, we'll have 10 years. You know, the king could die, the dog could die. Everybody knows the story. It doesn't freeze anything. Iran is allowed to develop its nuclear program under the deal. They can do research and development on advanced centrifuges. They're working on their intercontinental ballistic missiles, their ICBMs. And last time I saw a map, Israel's on the same continent as Iran. Those ICBMs are not for Israel, they're for you. They're for America. And they're quietly, slowly but surely, putting all the elements of their nuclear program together. And this deal was made in 2015. That's 7 years ago, so you're already halfway through. Some of the restrictions have already been removed. Next year, the ballistic missile restriction will be removed. In 3 years, it'll be centrifuges. In 8 years, it'll be stockpiles. So we're going to create a monster in the region that wants to swallow our Sunni Arab neighbors and threaten Israel with annihilation. Now, if we were forced to live in a world where this radical regime had nuclear weapons, then we'll have to figure out the best way to navigate it. But for have the leading powers of the world get together and to make such a deal is so outrageous in historical terms. It's like Munich. That's what's happening now. And if there's a deal in Vienna, it'll be Vienna 2, Munich 1, in terms of the scorecard for historic appeasement. It's a disaster. And it makes the prospects for war much greater between Israel and Iran, and between our Sunni Arab neighbors and Iran, because they will be flush with cash, they will continue their aggression, it will force us into a confrontation, and it will nuclearize the Middle East. Exactly what Ed said. If you think the Saudis are going to just wait for Iran to cross that nuclear threshold, and they won't, according to the deal, they won't have to sneak in or break in, they'll just walk in when all those restrictions are removed. The Saudis will want to nuclearize. The Emirates will want to nuclearize. Turkey, Egypt, others. And now you're taking the most unstable part of the world and you're turning it into a nuclear tinderbox for no reason. Everyone says, well, what's the alternative? The alternative is to actually take a stand. The alternative is to say, and make it very clear, the British Prime Minister, the American President, we will not allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons. And you put a credit with military action. If we have to, we don't want to, and understand that if anyone takes military action against Iran, Israel will pay the price, Bahrain will pay the price, the Emirates will pay the price. Understand that. So we don't want to see a war. But the best way to deter such a war is by making it clear to the Iranians that you're prepared to take whatever action is necessary to prevent this regime from developing nuclear weapons. It begins with a credible military threat. The second thing is you have to put massive sanctions on them. They're not even being enforced today. It was squeezing Iran's regime tremendously. And the third element that has never been in the policy, not of the United States under the Trump administration, and I haven't seen in the last 20 years, it's something that Ed said, which is reach out to the Iranian people. I don't know if it's 75 of the 80 million, but at least 2/3 of the Iranian people despise this regime. They've shown remarkable courage. They came to the streets in 2009. They had no support from the outside world. They're rioting in cities in Iran in 2015, in 2017, in 2019. They get no support from the outside world. They're your partners. They're your allies. We do not have a fight with the people of Iran. We have a fight with a radical regime that threatens us and threatens our Arab neighbors.